Well, look at who's back in the news again, and this time because they are still being a nuisance and still trying to find a way to appeal the decision in which he is locked up for. Derek Chauvin, the terrorist out of Minneapolis, well, one of several, but definitely one of the main ones, is now trying to appeal his murder conviction with the murder of George Floyd. Now, we all know last year Derek Chauvin was found guilty pretty much of every charge that he was hit with when it came to the murder of George Floyd, in which he was hit with a 22-year prison sentence. So he hasn't even done, well, I think he's already had time served already from him being already locked up. So he probably hasn't even done a whole 2 years yet. Maybe he has or hasn't done a whole 3. I can't remember. But now he's trying to overturn it because all he can really do at this point is try to appeal. But the thing is, I don't think his appeals are going to work. I really don't. So he can appeal until he runs out of appeals. He might as well just keep his ass right the hell where it is and do his 22 years. And they better be all 22. Really, it should have been way more than 22, but we just got to get what we get because we could have got nothing, honestly. Let's go ahead and get into it. Former Minneapolis terrorist, well, he's still currently a terrorist as far as I'm concerned, Derek Chauvin has asked the state court of appeals to overturn his conviction for the 2020 murder of George Floyd, according to an appeal filed Monday. The 82-page filing lists more than a dozen aspects of the case in trial that Chauvin's attorney argues tainted the proceedings and rendered them structurally defective, including extensive pretrial publicity and protests outside the courthouse, as well as the city's announcements during jury selection that it would pay a $27 million settlement to Floyd's family. That unfortunately has to come out of the pockets of the taxpayers. Floyd's death and video showing it ignited prolonged protests across the country over police brutality and racial injustice. And they left out across the globe because it wasn't just in the U.S. where these protests were happening. And an investigation launched a week later found Minneapolis and its police department engaged in a pattern of or practice of race discrimination. State human rights officials said in a report Wednesday. Among the issues, Chauvin and his attorney William Mormon are asking the appeals court to review or whether the venue should have been changed, the jury fully sequestered, or the trial delayed because of pretrial protests and media coverage. The appeal also accuses prosecutors of misconduct, alleging the state's attorney failed to properly disclose discovery information and adequately prepare prosecution witnesses. Prosecutors will save our comment for our reply in court to Mr. Chauvin's appeal. Minnesota Attorney General Keith Ellison's Deputy Chief of Staff John Stiles told CNN. Ellison led Chauvin's prosecution. Chauvin was convicted in April 2021 of second-degree unintentional murder, third-degree murder, and second-degree manslaughter. Body camera and bystanders video that captured the final moments of Floyd's life on May 25th, 2020 shows Chauvin kneeling on the 46-year-old black man's neck and back for more than 9 minutes as Floyd gasped for air and told officers, "I can't breathe." Chauvin's appeal filing argues his conviction should be overturned or the court should order a new trial in a different venue, saying the court proceedings were so pervaded by error, misconduct, and prejudice that they were structurally defective. Now, my thing is this. See how they keep trying, they kept trying to move the trial to another location as if that probably would have done any better because, like I said, everybody around the globe saw this happen. Everybody was pretty much, for the most part, equally outraged. Or some put on the surface that they were outraged. You know, some people are faker than a goddamn $3 bill in a Monopoly box, in a board game box. But where were they going to go that they thought they was going to get a better deal? And see, they do this stuff because they feel if they move to another location where they feel nobody really is aware, then they're going to get something out there for them. Let's be real here. They're mad because they lost. They're so used to winning in cases like this that they couldn't stand the fact that they lost. And it was a huge loss at that. Because this right here is very rare where a cop gets a hefty sentence such as this. Usually they'll give them the usual 10 years or whatever the case may be. But this guy got 22 years. 22 years in prison time is a very long time. Hell, 22 days is. So imagine 22 years. So now they're saying, oh, they didn't get a fair trial, this, and the third. Guess how many black people don't get fair trials? A lot. And sometimes because they don't get to make it to trial because they get killed before a trial even happens, but they still somehow get put on trial. Does George Zimmerman ring a bell? Trayvon Martin was murdered before, murdered by this pig. And you would think that the trial was about Trayvon Martin and his wrongdoing, which he was doing nothing wrong, but let them tell it. He was the aggressor. He was the villain. And George Zimmerman was the hero. And it's been hell on earth ever since. So yeah, they're really doing this because they lost. And they can't stand it. They have to hold this big ass weighted down L. They can't stand it. And they will look foolish. Guess what? Let's hypothetically say they gave Derek Chauvin a new trial. I have a feeling it's going to be the same results. And you wasted time and more of taxpayer money. At that point, the taxpayers, they might have to, they would have to activate. I'll just leave it like that. But why waste their time even doing something like this? There's nothing there. Absolutely nothing there. It says, the filing also argues Chauvin was not given his constitutional rights due to process and a fair trial. If the conviction is upheld, the appeal filing says the court should reduce Chauvin's sentence to be within the state's sentencing guidelines. Now, keep in mind, he got 22 years. What are they trying to reduce it to? The former officer turned terrorist was sentenced to 22 and a half years in prison, which exceeded Minnesota's sentencing guideline range of 10 years and 8 months to 15 years. At the time of sentencing, Judge Peter Cahill wrote in a memorandum that the case warranted a harsher sentence because Chauvin abused his position of trust and authority and treated Floyd without respect and denied him the dignity owed to all human beings. And that should be that. Chapter closed. Next case. And he did. He literally violated this man's rights. But now they want to argue semantics. Now they want to go by the book. Notice they want to go by the book when it's black blood on their hands. Talking about he didn't get a fair trial. I don't know about y'all, but I saw him get a fair trial. Did you? I saw it. Everyone else around the world saw it. Those who were watching, and many people was watching. So they can take this appeal and chalk it up, and I hope they burn and shred that appeal and keep his ass there and let him serve whatever he got to serve. It won't be long. And the fact that they keep doing this appeal lets you know that there's a good chance that he won't be getting out until his time is up, until it's time for him to get out after he's done with all this. And doesn't he still have some other charges from other things? What's that thing going on with the tax evasion with his wife, his ex-wife? And doesn't he still got that stuff going on with the other 3 cops as well? So, yeah. These 22 years, that's only the tip of the iceberg as far as I'm concerned. Keep his ass locked up in that cage. And that's my take on it. So I'm coming on here to pretty much do this update or add on to a current video that I already talked about. And shout out to Lisa Cabrera because she spoke about it on her channel a few days ago. As y'all know, I was out of town, so I really couldn't get it out there the way that I wanted to. So it says right here, a federal judge accepts Derek Chauvin's plea deal and will sentence him 20 to 25 years. Now, many of you looking at this is like, oh God, what does that actually mean? Actually, if things go the way that they should, it's not going to look too good for him. Because without really getting too deep into the article, based on what I've heard and what I've read, he's actually going to be possibly doing more time than what he's already currently doing. As we already know, Derek Chauvin is already doing 22 and a half years behind the crime in which he committed against George Floyd, in which, of course, we know he was sentenced to that a little over a year ago. But I'm going to read just a little bit right here. It says the federal plea deal means Chauvin will probably spend more time in prison than he faced under his state sentence. State prisoners in Minnesota typically serve 1/3 of their sentence on parole, which for him would mean 15 years in prison. Chauvin waived his right to contest his federal conviction if Magnuson accepted the plea agreement. Prosecutors revealed at a pretrial hearing last month that the three had rejected a plea agreement on the state charges. Terms were not disclosed. Lane's attorney, Earl Gray, said it was hard for the defense to negotiate when the three still didn't know what their federal sentences would be. And the three they're talking about are the other three terrorists that was with Derek Chauvin that day. And it goes on to say that Magnuson has not set sentencing dates for the other three officers convicted, so on and so forth. So it's like it was a waste of a plea deal, honestly, because it wasn't like he was going to get anything less. Like, his stuff was pretty much already etched in stone. If anything, it sounds to me, and I could be wrong, and y'all can correct me if I am, it sounds to me like the plea deal worked more so against them than for him. But that's my take on it.